Welcome to episode 51 of the Comfort via Discomfort podcast, where we are creating a mentally healthier world, one open, honest, and vulnerable conversation at a time. I'm your host, Adam Beaumier, and in this episode, I got to interview my friend Aariz Jamali. Aariz and I met back in 2014, 2015. We were doing our undergraduate degree together at the University of Windsor, and we were basically both involved in a student club, and that's where we got to know each other. When I met Aariz, I saw this strikingly handsome fellow who was pursuing things that he really cared about and was really passionate about. And really looked up to him because of his pursuit of his mission and his purpose. And I didn't really know a ton about Aariz at that time. But then 4 years later in 2018, when I started Comfort via Discomfort, I had been following Aariz online for a couple of years and learned that when he was younger, when he was growing up, he actually described himself as a shy loner kid, didn't have many friends, wasn't very good looking. And so he struggled a lot to fit in. And because of that, and because of his transformation and his dedication to a life of embracing discomfort, I reached out to him, and he was actually one of the first guests on my Featured Friday episodes when I was telling 1-minute stories about other people getting outside their comfort zone. So he's been part of this mission, this Comfort via Discomfort mission, since the very beginning in 2018. Since then, he's actually moved to Australia, which is a really interesting story in and of itself. He met his wife on a dating app, and he actually thought that she was from Nova Scotia at first, but actually turns out that she was from Australia. And his willingness to explore things that he didn't know, that he was uncertain with and unfamiliar with, actually led him to now living in Australia. They also have a 2.5 or 3-year-old son now named Adam. And in this episode, Aariz talks a lot about his transformation from that shy loner kid to the person that I met him at the University of Windsor. He also talks about how and why he made this giant leap to live in Australia, even though everything he knew was here in Windsor. Or was back home in Windsor, Ontario. And he also talks about how him and his wife actually had a lot of challenges with their son before the age of 2. And because of the challenges, it actually led to a misdiagnosis where doctors believed that their son had developmental disabilities. And this really challenged the relationship between Aariz and his wife in terms of their communication, in terms of how they wanted to handle things and how they wanted to question things and everything in between. So I know you're going to enjoy this episode. I learned a lot from Aariz. He is so insightful and just so dedicated to a life of embracing discomfort and of growing personal development. So it's really inspiring. If you enjoy this episode, please consider sharing it with a friend or family member so that they can learn from Aariz and his experience as well. And of course, please consider leaving a review, because it would go a long way to support the channel. And if you don't have time to leave a review, just click that follow button on Spotify or Apple, because that helps out the show as well. Of course, you can find the links to find Aariz online down in the description, and any resources that he mentioned in the episode are there as well. Alrighty, enjoy the conversation. All right, welcome back to another episode of the Comfort via Discomfort podcast. I'm here with my friend Aariz Jamali. Aariz, I'm super happy to have you on the show.
I'm excited to be here, Adam.
Yeah, I'm excited to get into your story and really learn some more about you. We spent some time together back in 2014, 2015 at the University of Windsor.
They all are kind of a merged year.
Yeah. So what was that, like 9 years? Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't like putting numbers to it, but it was like 9 years ago. But yeah, we did our undergrad together. We spent some time on Enactus together, Enactus Windsor, doing some projects. And I've always known you as a person that is willing to sort of embrace discomfort and try new things and go after things that they want to do. And so I'm excited to, like I said, learn more about you and understand a little bit more about how you develop this mindset.
Hmm.
And I know you have a son now, so I want to get into what it's been like being a father and
Hmm.
how you might help him to embrace discomfort as he's growing up and go after what he really wants. So before we like really get into those different topics, why don't you tell me a little bit about who Aariz is as a person and what you do for work, and we'll kind of go from there.
Sure. So, I mean, in a nutshell, I would say R is, I, for example, I encompass all the attributes that a Virgo has. And if you were to look at what a Virgo is, sensitive, you know, the sensitivity is the biggest one. The biggest one. It's like I'm a very sensitive person. They're very creative. They're very loyal people, and I think that's me in a nutshell. So I'm very loyal to my friends and family, to what I do. I am very sensitive to all to my everyone who's close to me, and as a person, as an individual, I am a very creative. I think so. I think like I like to think myself as a very creative person, a very imaginative person, and someone who just likes to kind of think differently and just like how can I make this my own way? How can I add flair to this? How can I make add a little R spice to this? So that's who I am in a nutshell. And what I do for work is this might not be surprising, but I'm in marketing. So I'm a marketing manager at Westcon, and I work in the cybersecurity space.
Yeah, and you live in a place in Australia. Well, I haven't interviewed anybody in Australia yet, even though we were together in Windsor,
Mm,
Ontario.
yep.
Now you're in Australia.
Yes.
And where specifically?
Sydney, Australia.
In Sydney, Australia. And
Yeah.
you've been there for how long? 5 years now?
6 years in August this year now.
Six,
Yeah.
6 years.
6 years.
Nice.
I have
Wow.
my PR, and I'm trying to just. I think I'm ready for citizenship, but I don't know if I need one more year. So I'm trying to. I'll have to look into that.
Oh, wow. You're
Yeah.
that close, eh?
Yeah. So I'm that close.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible. That's incredible. And it's so interesting because like back when we were on Enactus together, like you were shooting and producing videos back
Hmm.
then.
Hmm.
And so I mean, even 8-9 years ago, it was like, yeah, Ariz is like the artsy, like creative guy. Like he can make anything look amazing. And so you had that reputation in Enactus, whether you knew it or accepted it or not, but you had that back then.
I definitely didn't know that, but I know I was working on some Enactus videos, and even then it was just like, because when you're in that space, you're like, when can I make, this next video I'm gonna make? It's a small short film for your class, but you're like, this is gonna be the next Oscar, 100%. It's gonna go into this like, this type of film festival and that. So, yeah.
Yeah, how did you even get into video? Like, has it always been something that has caught your attention, or something that you wanted to do, or did you get into it like around the time that we were together at the University of Windsor?
No. So actually, I kind of always knew that I wanted to go into video and photo kind of thing, and I kind of wanted to be in the entertainment space. But cultural influences have always been like, oh, there's only two careers in being Indian. It's be a doctor or be an engineer. And if you don't, you're not good enough. So, but I always knew kind of that I wanted to kind of go into entertainment. I wanted to be an actor actually, and I really wanted to go into Bollywood movies, and that was my biggest dream. So, whoever doesn't know me, I'm a huge Bollywood fanatic. I've seen every good or bad or super shitty Bollywood movie ever
Oh my
possible made,
goodness.
and it was my dream. Like had this, everything scoped out. I want to go to Bollywood. I want to go to India. I'm going to act in movies, but I knew how competitive it was, so I was like, okay, I got to find a different avenue. Maybe I'll go into directing, and I realized that that's also very competitive. So I'm like, maybe I'll learn a different skill, like producing or lighting or something or sound. So slowly and slowly, I started kind of going towards that direction. But during uni, I was also making YouTube videos with my family. We had a channel called We Are the Jam Fam, and we used to make small 2 to 3 minute
We are the
skits.
Jam Fam. That
Yeah,
is fantastic.
yeah. So it was
Are they
me, my
still
two
up on
brothers.
YouTube?
We took it down because a lot of them were at
Oh,
the time. This was around 2000, after 2009, so 2012 to 2014, I think. But they're really politically incorrect. So a lot of the words that we use, a lot of the stuff we said, if you were to see it now, it's just like, whoa, this cancel. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, then I'm glad you took it down, but I wish I knew about it back in 2014 or
2014.
2015, because
Yeah.
seeing you make those types of videos, like just videos in general or up on YouTube, would have
Mm.
been really interesting. So you said engineer or doctor,
Mm.
and at what point did it start becoming a little bit more okay for you to like venture off into video or acting or something like that?
Well, actually, like, I mean, there's like a lot of friends that know this because it's just like they rip on me on it. But I did about 4 years of undergrad of just pursuing, medical. Like I want to become a doctor. I want to become a doctor. I want to do biology as an undergrad. And unfortunately, I wasn't given the resources to kind of, or like the knowledge to be like, hey, you can go into any field and become a doctor.
Mm,
You could have done film, media communication and film, which I graduated in, could have done that degree, that did your pre-requirements for medical school and gone to medical school. So had I known that, perhaps I wouldn't have been sitting here working in cybersecurity, talking about marketing or anything. Perhaps I would have been a doctor right now. But halfway through, I mean, like I said, like I wasn't happy about being in biology. I just found it really dry. And I just kept pursuing the film side on the side. I started doing things on the
mm,
side. And eventually it just became 4 years ended, and I remember my dad saying, like, what are you gonna do? Like, I'm done paying for this. I said 4 years commitment to paying for your, university. You do your own thing. So I had to kind of like go to OSAP, knock on some doors and not physically, but like go to OSAP, get a loan, and then restart my kind of education. Luckily, I had a lot of prerequisites done, so just dive right into film. I'm like, I want to do film. I want to do film production, and I want to learn about that. And that's when I took it. Yeah.
interesting. Wow. Okay, that's a little bit different than I anticipated. And so, I mean, it sounds like you knew a little bit about like what you wanted to do,
Hmm.
and you tried to go tried to go the other route, and it was just not working out whatsoever.
No.
And then eventually, when you kind of had the option, you were like, okay, this is what I'm going to pursue. Like, this is what I'm actually going to do.
Mm.
So where was it? Like, when was there? Like throughout your childhood, like when did you or how did you develop this like mindset to actually pursue the things that you like really wanted to do? Was it something that kind of came naturally like
Mm.
within the family that you were growing up in, or was there a specific like, I don't know, a couple experiences that you had that kind
Hmm.
of pushed you that way?
Hmm. So like I said, Bollywood is a huge influence in my family. We all
Yeah.
listen to, like, my growing up, we would listen to, like, old classical Bollywood music. We'd go to the movie theaters. There was no Bollywood movies playing in Windsor at the time. So it was like a luxury if we go to Toronto. We go to Mississauga, there was a cinema called Albion Cinemas, and it had like one theater or two theaters in it. That's it, and it played like all the Bollywood movies that you could think of. And it was like, just like, this is it. Like, I love to go and watch them. So it was always like a kind of theme in my family. We would,
Mm.
we would do karaoke singing in the basement sometimes and just jam out and just sing and play. My uncle used to play on the piano and sing Bollywood songs. And so it's always like, it was like always like, you know, I'm surprised like how none of us had a career in Bollywood. Like, at this point, it was more so that at that case. But I kind of knew that I wanted to go, and it became so much that I started like, manifesting everything. Like any movie that came up, I started manifesting that this is my scenario now. They
Mm.
do this movies where like they'll show the hero of the movie. He goes to the college and he meets a girl and he fights some goons and he wins the girl. I started thinking that I'm gonna go to college and I'm gonna meet the girl of my dreams. She's gonna walk by in slow motion, and I'm gonna fight some bad guys. Like this is the stuff that I was so kind of, because I'm still am like I'm still kind of like loopy about it, but it's always been something that's been kind of a part of me since childhood.
Oh, that's really interesting. Yeah, Bollywood, I was introduced to Bollywood back in 2015, 2016 type of, so
Hmm.
around the same time.
Yeah.
And it was, I loved it. Like it was so much fun. There's so much energy. It's so dramatic.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I absolutely love it.
Yeah.
um, so, shortly after our time together at the
Hmm.
University of Windsor, in 2018, I started this like comfort via discomfort thing, and you were one of the very first people. I think you were like episode 3 or 4 on my
Right.
featured Friday show. So
Yeah.
I mean, like I made a 1 minute video every week of somebody else like stepping outside of their comfort zone. Sorry, one second.
Hmm.
I don't know if you could hear that sound or
The
not.
doorbell or
Could
something.
you?
Yeah.
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 No, it was my Google reminder.
Oh.
Anyways, so yeah, you were one of my first guests on the Featured Friday show, and it was like a 1 minute story of somebody else telling their story
Hmm.
of a time they got outside their comfort zone, why it was so scary, what they learned, and what advice that they had for somebody else. And at that time, I think you had just won like Mr. India, was it
Yeah.
in 2018?
Yeah.
Yeah.
2018. Yeah.
And so your video was talking about how you were like a shy loner kid, and then eventually you started to like stop trying to fit in and
Hmm.
started to try to be yourself a
Hmm.
little bit more, and
Hmm.
that led you to then pursue the things that you wanted to pursue. So
Hmm.
you want to talk to me a little bit more about like that story in particular? I want to know a little bit more about it.
Yeah. So I mean, the shy loner kid. I mean, it's kind of like it's a weird way of putting it because I feel like, you make your friends from at least up until high school, from in grade school. So because the people I went to grade school with from kindergarten, it's the same people I went to school with in high school. So you're stuck with
Mm-hmm.
them for maybe 12 years and from the beginning. So they know who you are. So one impression that if you made, like whether you're the kid who, shit his pants, or you're the kid who, like, ate the boogers off, whatever it was, that's you up until probably graduation, and that's going to live with you up until graduation. And that's the stigma that we have to live with, is that we never get to live that any of that down, you know. And we see that even now in shows. It's like, oh, that's the kid who, like, I think it was a movie called, like, Diary of a Wimpy Kid. It's like, oh, that's the kid who touched the
Mm.
bubble gum on the ground, like that. It's that kind of thing. It's like you're always going to live with it. So I don't know what happened, because, like, you're growing up with all these people, you're playing sports, and at some point it became the popular kids, and it became the kids who were collecting Pokemon cards, and just having living their Dragon Ball Z lives, and there's kids who were the artsy types, and there's like a whole different cliques, and it was like I neither fell in one group or the other group. It was,
Mm.
it was one foot here, one foot there, and I was always trying to do things that kind of satisfied both. And like this is where my Virgo thing kicked in, because like one time I remember I did something, really cool, I guess, and I joined the cool kids for a bit. And I was hanging out with them, but then I felt bad for my other friends who they were like, "Hey, come play Dragon Ball Z with us. We'll play make believe, And we're sitting in the park, like throwing Dragon Ball Z, like whatever the words were, but like we're playing like actual, just acting it out. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
nah, I don't want to do that anymore. I want to play basketball with these guys. So it's like at the same time, like, I'm sorry, like, let's hang out later on, but I don't want to tell anybody. But it's like that whole life of fitting in, and you're never comfortable, because you're just like, you're never being yourself. You're just trying to put on a
Mm.
facade for the people you're trying to impress in that moment of time.
Yeah.
And it wasn't and it was throughout all of grade school and throughout high school. And it wasn't until I think in grade 11, when I grew up my hair, and again it was just like long hair down to my shoulders. And I think it was my French teacher, and she was like, oh, your hair is so voluminous, and so you part it so nicely. And like I said, I would style it like a Bollywood actor, like I would style it and everything, and like all that. And like, your hair is so voluminous, you're always so fashionable with your hair, and you should model in the fashion show that we do at school. So I'm like, all right, and all the cool people are doing it. Like all the all the hot girls at the time, all the cool guys at the time, they're all modeling. I'm like, why did she pick me? And I did it, and it became like this whole, wow, like this guy, he can model. He has a fierce Zoolander look, like he can do it.
Hey,
And
there you go.
and it was like, okay, well, and I got it, and I got some like really good kind of like feedback from it. And I even won, like, I think it was Riverside Secondary School model next top model award at prom and everything. And there was stuff that like you don't expect. Like there was people who like won prom king, like, yeah, that guy's gonna win it 100%. He's the coolest. You can't compete with him. Prom queen, you can't compete with her. The next athlete, you can't compete. And it was like next top model, and I was like, oh, probably gonna be that guy. And it's like they called my name, and I'm like, holy shit, like I'm next top model. And it became like this huge confidence booster. And then going into university, it was like those people, everybody that you knew for the last 12 years, all become irrelevant. It all goes away. Their status in, like, and I feel like, and I feel for them, because they probably feel in the same boat as you, because you're now a small fish in a big pond. And
Hmm.
because now it's like you're meeting like hundreds and thousands of new people, and that's the same thing happened to me. Like I started meeting with a whole bunch of people started liking me for different reasons, and I started clicking into different groups. I found people who were in, I think there was a group called Windsor Multicultural something association. It was all Indian people, and I found like new Indian friends who had like-minded kind of thoughts in like loving Bollywood and performing and dancing and all that stuff. I'm like, this is great. I became friends with a lot of people. My friend group went from 2 people that I knew who were just not as popular as the popular kids, but from those two, and it expanded to like 30, 40. And it's just like I had a group, and I had like parties at my house now, and I had like pool parties, and I just became like this, like, I'm like, this is the life I'm living now. Like, I have so many friends, but it just became that, like, how many of these friends are your friends that you can just ring up, and you're gonna have
Like your
40
4
friends.
a.m. friends.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And even those, out of the 40 friends I had, there were like 3 of them. And then every single time I used to go back to them. So that whole shy loner kid aspect, it was just me kind of, I think I did that to myself. And personally, I feel like it's not my fault. It's not nobody's fault. I just think that circumstances and the social pressures that we go through, we have to do that kind of stuff. We have to kind of put a face on it. And I think that, like, it's just tough being a kid from grade school up until high school, because you can't be yourself. I can't, like, I love wearing, like, I tell my wife, I'm just like, oh, I want to wear pink pants today with a white t-shirt. I'm going to rock it out. I'm going to wear cowboy boots if I want to with it, because I think it looks cool. This is who I feel like expressing myself as today. I could never
Mhm.
do that in high school. I could never do that in grade school, because the looks I would get, and I'd be known for the next 12 years as the kid who wore pink pants and a white t-shirt and cowboy boots, because what a weirdo. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
and at that point, you don't know that after high school, everything's going to be irrelevant.
yeah, exactly. And then in high school, everybody's dressed the same. They're all wearing American Eagle polos with Hollister or something, or Abercrombie,
Yeah.
or Aeropostale with the pop-up collars and the American Eagle jeans, and it's the same look everybody across. Whereas I remember my dad got me skinny jeans back in, like, I'm like, these are way too skinny. Like, I'm not wearing this. My dad got me pink pants and plaid corduroy pants, and I'm just like, no, this is like 70s shit. I'm not wearing this. And my dad's like, no, this is stylish. You should wear it. I'm like, no, get me American Eagle slim fit, no, bootcut jeans, and
Yeah.
I want the Aeropostale, or I want that kind of shirt. And he's like, no, like, I was like, fine, whatever. And he let me wear it. It was like, but like that stuff is now fashionable today.
Yeah.
Um, but it's just like you have to kind of, unfortunately, you just have to kind of go with how everybody else is doing, everybody else is doing, and that just, it's like, if you jump on the trend fast enough, then you're the cool kid. If you don't, and if you just even choose to the slightest be your own self, you're the loner kid. You're the unpopular kid.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. And all from like a teacher saying like, wow, your hair is beautiful, you should be in a fashion show, and you're just like, oh, all right, maybe I will try this, maybe I will try this. I did
Yeah,
not know that's where that came from, which is
yeah,
really, really interesting. And the
yeah.
stuff about like the being the shy loner kid, or or being sensitive and trying to fit in and stuff, I have questions for you around those different topics, with
Hmm.
you now being a father, and you now raising a little kiddo, raising your son. But before we get into that,
Hmm.
I want you to tell me a little bit about how you went from like the University of Windsor to Australia now, and I want you to tell me a little bit about like the story of how you met your wife, because I love this story, and I think
Hmm.
it, from everything that I know about you, I think it fits you so well.
Yeah, right. Um, so I think it happened pretty naturally, because uh, so it was around, I think, 2015. Um, I was kind of focused on my education then. So because my dad stopped paying for my education, so I had taken a huge loan out with OSAB. So I was like, no, I gotta get it done if I'm already committed to it. It's either this, or do I quit and just join the workforce. But so I was dedicated to that. I was working at TD, and I was saving up money for going to India, and I had I had like about 25, 30 grand saved just to go to India. I was looking up like the school that I wanted to join, when the enrollment started, where would I be living, how would I be commuting to there, like all that stuff. And during that time, I was also kind of on this like dating platform, and it's a dating platform that is not Tinder or I don't know even know what other ones are out there now, but it was one that was just for Indians, and just Indians and Pakistanis and just for the South Asian community. And I joined this kind of platform maybe like 4 or 5 years earlier, but it wasn't as big then as it was then. And yeah, so I'm just like, I had it open, whatever. I don't think I checked where I had it set to, so I was just swiping, right. There are people that I knew in the community. I'm like, maybe not, because like I know them personally, so it was weird. So like but like it was just like, there are people from Chicago, from Toronto, from New York. I was like, okay, well, it's pretty open. That's pretty cool. And I swiped right on someone, and I'm like, Sydney NS, it said at the bottom after we matched. I'm like, Sydney NS. I looked it up on Google, and it was Sydney NS, Nova Scotia. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. Never been to the East Coast.
And
That was pretty
being,
neat.
yeah, and being in Windsor, Ontario, it's not that far away, right? It's like
In
it's not that far
retrospect,
away. Yeah.
and yeah, and like it's like a 5 hour flight. People go to Calgary, people go to Vancouver. I've never heard of anybody go to that side, but I'm like, let's if time comes and it becomes a thing, and I want to go, and because I was like, I was already like kind of like, oh man, there's a girl in Chicago, let's make a road trip out of it, let's go see what's up. But I was like, if the time comes, we'll go to we'll make a boys trip to Nova Scotia. So we're chatting, and just like after like I think a few messages, I'm like, oh, okay. And then she starts talking to me, and she's like, oh, it's late now, I gotta go to bed. I'm like, late? What are you talking about? I'm like, maybe the time difference. I just looked up Nova Scotia time. I'm like, it's not that bad. It's probably 3 or 4 hours ahead. And she's like, no, it's like 11 o'clock at night. And I was like, wait a minute, where are you? We're like, where are you? And she's like, oh, Sydney, New South Wales, Australia. And I'm like, geez, okay, cool. And it was funny because my cousin, he loved the whole Australian culture. He loves it. Like he loves the Australian culture. It's his dream to go to Sydney. So I was like, hey, guess what? Like I met a girl in Sydney, so I'm talking to this girl and stuff like that. And he's like, no way, that's so sick. Ask her about this. Ask her about that. And I'm like super intrigued about this. So we start talking. But the thing is, we knew on a very, we obviously knew that like, okay, this is not gonna work out because this is in Sydney. I had even like I didn't even like I knew Australia existed, but it's a country that like, it's like you don't think about. It's like almost like I never knew Fiji. I didn't know about the Cayman Islands. Like you knew about it, but like you don't know where it was on the map. Like so,
Yeah. You don't know
I
anything
was
about the
like,
place.
yeah, okay, I knew where Australia was on the map, but like
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, besides the point, like I just like no one thinks about Australia. So um, I was like, oh well, this is not gonna work out, whatever. Like, but like I love talking to you. Let's just stay friends. You can be my little pen pal, digital pen pal. We can just talk to and stuff like that. And it was cute because we started like sending each other gifts. So we met around August. We met actually, I know the date. It was like August 14, 2016. Yeah, 16. And my birthday comes on the 4th of September. So she sent me like a gift. And then like after like 3 months, like I sent her a gift for something, and like we just started talking back and forth. We were writing letters to each other as well. It was pretty cute. It was pretty cool. Even though we lived in a digital world, we were still writing letters. Um, and yeah, like, and then one thing just led to the other. It just became like a very, like an emotional attraction because I didn't know this person on a physical level. It would
Yeah.
just became like we Skyped and stuff a lot. We would FaceTime, we would send Snapchats, and we had a score streak going and everything. But we just didn't know each other physically. We just didn't know how tall this person was, how they would look next to me, how they would look,
Hmm.
how they would feel, all that stuff. So it became, and I think I think it was such a pure kind of attachment because it was like I just knew this person how they were behind a screen.
Yeah.
They could have presented themselves. They could have been going through the shittiest day and come online and be like, "Hey, how's it going?" Or they could have been like angry. Like I have no idea what they went through. So um, it was just that kind of attraction. And I think around December, like that year, we were just like, okay, well, this is getting kind of serious, and I'm kind of, and like she also was like looking to get married as well. Like she was like, this is my goal, is I want to get married. So you let me know. What is this? What is this relationship? I'm like, look, I don't want to lose you. Like, I think I really value our friendship, and I really value what we're going towards. Let me talk to my parents. My parents were away on a holiday. They came back in January, I believe. I think. And then we set up a time on Skype. I had chatted to her mom. I told her my intentions that like, I really like your daughter. And she's like, so you're gonna fly here? And I'm like, if it happens, I will. Yeah, 100%. Like, I'll plan
I
something.
love it.
And my parents talked, and I promised them like, look, I'm gonna come once I graduate. I will come in June 2017. Um, And yeah, in February, I think I introduced them to my parents. I told my parents around January though, but like this, I'm talking to somebody and they're like, Australia, geez, okay, cool, like let's talk. And in February, we met on Skype, we introduced each other, we talked, and then it just became like an official kind of cool. Our kids are talking, they like each other. Let's set what's the next step. Is it going to be we do a nikah, which is like the actual Islamic ceremony of being wedded Islamically. So like, what do we do? What is the next step? Is he going to come here for an engagement? We I mean, all right, are you guys coming? That kind of conversation started happening. So I was already planning on going. My parents were unable to go, but like we were just going to go and kind of do a small engagement at home, and then I'm just going to meet her family, meet her, and then come back after a month. So come June 2017, I went to Australia by myself, met her whole family.
All by yourself. You
It
went to
was
Australia.
all
You're
by
just like,
myself. Yeah.
I'm just going, man. I'm just going for it. I love it.
It was, well, the thing is, I knew the intention I was going for. It
Yeah,
was
yeah.
to kind of propose to her, to physically meet her, obviously, first, but then propose to her, and just meet her whole family. And it became like it wasn't a huge thing, but it was like her whole family she has a pretty big family from her dad's side.
Yeah.
So they did a small little engagement at home. We did, like, it was nice and intimate, but it was like still big. For me, as a one person in a huge family, it's less like, whoa, okay, cool, nice to meet you, nice to meet you.
And you're in this
Um,
brand new place too.
Brand new place, new to Australia. I mean, there's like a whole new, there's a different like story to what I thought of Australia before going. But yeah, met her for the first time, and like right away, I got out of the gate, I saw her, I'm like, I gotta open my Snapchat. I sent a Snapchat. I still have it saved, and I'm like, guy, I sent a snap to all my friends and family, and I was like, guys, look, she's real, she
She's real.
exists, and and I like was like touching her face, and like, look, she exists and stuff like that. Um, but yeah, like it was, and then it became like a physical attraction right away. It was like, okay, wow,
Yeah.
like this is who you are. I talked to you for a year and a half, and and she showed me around Australia. We went to like a few places, and then when it was time to go, I wouldn't have seen her for another year because we were planning the wedding 2018.
Wow.
So it was like, okay, now my priorities have changed. I was 30K that I saved up to go to India to go to Bollywood and stuff like that. Now seem like, okay, let's put this in the back burner. Let's focus on a career or something now. Let's focus on, I want to be with this girl. Okay, let's go to, what's the next step? I think I came back in July 22nd or something like that, and while I was here, my wife at the time, well, my wife was like, you should kind of put some resumes out and see what you are, because I just had graduated university in
Mm-hmm.
2016 in April, and then I was looking at jobs, and my manager at TD was like, okay, well, let's work to kind of put you towards corporate, to go to work with communications department in TD in Toronto in the marketing division. And I was like, that's my backup plan, but my actual plan is to go to India and focus on that. So technically, if none of this had happened, if I had not downloaded this app, maybe I would have been in India, struggling, not struggling, who knows? But yeah, so I had kind of like, I was like, okay, now things have changed. So I think I put some resumes out. It was fine. People were like, look, we can't hire you because you came on a holiday visa. So I went back home. I was like, whatever. That's at least I kind of wanted to check the job scope. I went back home, and I think a few days later, I got a call from one of the jobs, or an email, sorry, and it's like, hey, we would like to set up a time. I'm like, oh, well, I'm in Canada now. Can we do a Skype call? She's like, yeah. So we joined on Skype. They loved my resume, my background of like, working with Enactus, doing
Mm-hmm.
videos, working at TV, all this stuff. And they're like, we would love to kind of do second steps. Are you coming back to Australia or not? I'm like, well, depending on what the opportunity is and that. They're like, okay, well, this is the opportunity. If you do decide, you gotta let us know. Otherwise, we're gonna pursue other candidates. And then like I had a conversation with them, and then like the next day at like I'm doing these interviews like 1 o'clock in the morning, like
Oh
two
my
o'clock in the morning,
goodness.
and then another person called, and then like I think I was like three total, and I was like, okay, well, there's something, there's Windsor wasn't giving me any opportunities, but other than TD, Toronto, it was way too competitive. I was looking in jobs in Toronto. Everybody was asking for an MBA. Everybody was asking for some type of post-secondary education.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, well, and then they're paying rent $1,200 a month and all this. I'm like, geez, like this is gonna be tough. And I knew people who had gone to Toronto, like around there, like people that we
Yeah.
worked with and people we went to school with. They were going, and I was like, I don't know how they're affording this in Toronto or living there and living these like. I see their snaps, and like, geez, like they're working at RBC, they're working at TD and
Yeah.
Scotia, and like I don't know. But I was like, it's way too competitive. I don't want to work at a teller but just in Toronto. Like I don't want to do that. I don't want to work as an FSR, but in Toronto, like it's not a. I want to go into corporate and at least have a good paying salary and stuff
Right.
like
Yeah.
that. But yeah, look, what happened was I got a job offer, and then I went to my parents, like, look, I got a job offer, like, and it's in Australia,
Bye.
and bye, yeah, pretty much. And then they were like, have you even applied in Canada? Like, you haven't done, and it always became a huge deal. Like, they were not happy. They were, because the whole plans have changed. Everything that we were kind of, that was set in course had altered overnight.
Mm.
And it was like, now you, and it was like all this like back and forth, like now, it was became like this whole thing where like they kept saying how now you only want to go to Australia because she lives there and this and that. And it's like, no, that's not the case. But if Toronto offered me a job, if Montreal offered me a job, if Calgary, I've applied resumes everywhere. If someone gives me a job, I will stay here. But I don't have prospects. I have 3 job offers technically sitting from Australia, or people interested at least.
Yeah.
I haven't even got that much in Canada. I'm like, look, I'm gonna go. I feel like I want to really pursue this, and I've told them that it's 1 year, and then the plan is to come back. I'll come back here. We'll come back and we'll work
And
here in
and how
Toronto.
long has it been now?
It's been 6 years.
Oh, that's awesome.
But like that's what I mean. Like, and then I went to my work and I'm like, hey, I'm leaving. And that day was funny because my request for a salary increase had also been approved because I told them I'm getting married and stuff. And I'm like, I'm leaving, sorry. And they're like, that's happy. We're happy for you. So I went to Australia, and I could only work 6 months at a time. So when I got there, the job that I kind of came for, another person had kind of called me the day I landed, and then they're like, hey, we're interested in work. This is a small college that we work for. This is you have education experience. You know how to film stuff in education industry and all this stuff. We'd have to hire you. Come for an interview. The next day, they're like, you can start on Thursday. I landed on Monday. I'm like, geez. Okay. So I just took it and started working. 6 months later, I could only stay in a role for 6 months. And I was like, let's hope I get another job. If not, I'll have to go back. Like, I'm not going to sit idle in Australia and not do nothing. And like luckily the second job came, and then I did it another 6 months, and then that led to the wedding. And my parents were like, what's your plan? Like, are you coming back to Canada and stuff like that? And I'm like, look, I have another job offer on the line like now. And then that job offer was actually a bigger one. So that one was, so I was working for that educated college. I went to YMCA, did a marketing role there, and then again film based and everything. And then I think after around the wedding time, they all came. We did the whole wedding shebang, all that stuff. And when they went back, I was started talking to Cisco. So Cisco reached out. Well, I had applied to a whole bunch of roles, but there was a recruiter who reached out to me on behalf of Cisco. And then she was like, "Look, Cisco's hiring. I like your resume. I want to put you forward." And that's why I came back, and I just like, look, Cisco's hiring. Like, this is a big company. So I came back. I'm like, let's do another 6 months.
Yeah. Wow.
And at that point, I kind of had made my decision, even though my parents were they all kind of knew, but I kind of made my decision that I'm going to stay here because it was one job after the other. And even though there were 6-month roles because of my visa restriction, the scope was there.
Yeah.
And it was a lot more than I was getting in Canada.
Yeah. And you still found a way to make it work. Like, I mean, you're still,
Yeah.
no matter what was coming up, you're just like, I'm going to find a way. Like, I'm just going to keep applying to jobs and keep getting something and do this sort of 6 month at a time type of thing. There wasn't really much roadway past that.
I mean, like if like 6 months down the road, if I did a year and then after that, like it was like, okay, well, that was it. There was no more jobs coming. And that was my 1 year luck of getting 2 jobs, and I got the experience, and I was just sitting there. Then yes, I would have most definitely would have came back, because it's like, I'd rather be at home than be in Australia and then just like be jobless. And so at least I could go back to TD or something, you know what I mean? But it was just like one after the other. I'm like, there's something here that is now other than the weather, obviously, but it's like there's something here. Obviously, the job market is really good.
Yeah. Yeah. What's interesting to me is that, while you describe your story of like, oh, you met on an app, and a few weeks ago when we met, you told me that you didn't know that you had the location set to worldwide, and that's why you got matched with somebody from New South Wales, even though you didn't know that they were, located in Australia at the time. But like, as you tell your story, there's, you can look at it in 2 perspectives. You can look at it in terms of like, oh, there's so many times where this could have went wrong, or there's so many reasons why this wouldn't work out. So maybe I don't pursue it. Or there's like the, yeah, but what if it does type of thing. And you're
Hmm.
definitely
Yeah.
on this like, what if it does type of thing,
Yeah.
and
What if
taking
it
it
does? Yeah.
little steps at a time, and then
Yeah.
eventually taking like an actual big step
Yeah.
to move to Australia. And that's why I think it just really encapsulates who you are as a person, as far as I know you. And
Yeah.
now, like you said, it's been 6 years, and you two have been married since 2018, and now you have
Hmm.
a son named Adam
Yeah.
as well. I'd
Yep.
just like to throw that out there. That's a interesting choice of name. And so your son is almost 3 years old now. And
Yep.
you described to me, I mean, first, before we get into any of the details, like what has that done for you? What's that been like? What's that experience of fatherhood been like for you so far in the first like 2.5 to 3 years?
Um, I always say this, and it's been the most amazing journey. Uh, Exciting, scary, but amazing. And I used to say this about marriage as well before, because like I think I gave a speech once at a wedding, and I was like, "You guys get." I was like my wedding, and I was like, "Guys, get married because once you have find your best friend for life, that's your best friend. That's the person.
Mm,
That's your 4 a.m. person now.
yeah.
That's the person who's going to be there. Uh, they will do everything that your actual best friend might not do at a capacity. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean?
Yep.
That's your friend for life. That's your soulmate. And I was like, you guys, get married because that's, it's the most amazing kind of feeling to know that you have someone, now joined by the hip, walking with you, being on all walks of life, supporting you in any way
Yeah.
possible. So I said that. And now it's just like, now I say the same thing about being a father. I'm like, guys, have kids. It's the most
I'm
amazing
thankfully I
feeling.
have headphones in and my wife can't hear exactly what you're saying right now.
No, like the thing is like have kids. It's been a great experience because it's been such a loving experience. It's been scary, like I said, it's been scary and but it's been so exciting to know
Yeah.
a child that looks up to you, loves you unconditionally. No, like this person won't go to any random person and just love them the same way. They wouldn't
Yeah.
come to the other person and be like, "Hey, I'm hurt." Like an adult would. Like an adult would be like, if when the next person, if I hurt my arm, if I find the next person next to me, like, "Hey, I'm hurt." My child, Adam, like if he fell down, he would find me in a park and be like, "Daddy," like owie or something like that. And it's just like this is the I'm his world, and and he's like sorry, and in my wife's world and stuff like that. So like it's just been like to make and watch him grow and watch him see and embody what we're trying to show, like teach him, and kind of give him these personality traits. Let him kind of find his own way, but teach him words, teach him how to speak, teach him how to have manners, how to eat, make him grow, how to function. It's like you are now, this is who you created. And even I have this Google kind of hub sitting here, and it's just his pictures that cycle through. And then sometimes it's like
Oh,
I'll see pictures from the day he's born, like right now, and there's a picture of him being born, and a picture from November where he was like slept on ice skates. And I'm like, here he is, like fully bound and like wrapped in like in a swaddle, and then there's him wearing skates and a helmet. I'm like, that's 2 years past, and he's just like how much he's grown. So
yeah.
it's been unreal.
Yeah, no, it's pretty incredible. I have a niece who is turning 7 in like 5 or 6 weeks, and like, it's crazy. Like
Mm,
I'm getting like memories on my phone of like 5 years
yeah,
ago when she was,
yeah,
not even 2 years old and could barely, say any words or whatever.
yeah,
And it's just like, where did the freaking time go? Like our parents always tell us like time flies when you have kids. Like, one day they're 4 and the next day they're like
yeah,
16. And we don't necessarily believe them so much. And then when it's happening
yeah,
right in front of us, we're like, my goodness.
yeah,
Like my niece, she's almost 7, and she is like she's a little teenager. And like when she hits 6, like things it just like things change. Like she's almost like a little like a little freaking adult.
yeah,
And it's
yeah,
just like, my goodness, it's crazy.
yeah.
Yeah, and I joke about the kids. My wife and I do want to have kids. It's just not right now. So
Yeah.
no, I'm just kidding. But yeah, and I mean, I want to talk about some of the challenges that you and your wife have had raising your son over the first 2.5 years, because I know that there were kind of like a misdiagnosis with your son having like developmental delays, I guess. And so
Mm.
you want to take me through a little bit of like what kind of set the stage for like what happened, and then we kind of explore it a bit. And I have a few
Yeah.
questions for you about that.
Yeah. Yeah. So having a baby, it's so challenging because you don't know, especially if it's your firstborn, you have no idea what to expect. You don't know what you're diving into. Um, you don't know what's normal. There were times when I would walk into my baby's room when he was a baby and then just like put my finger next to his nose to see if he's breathing at night, or did I swaddle him too tightly? Because you don't know how to handle. Like I'm holding him in the most fragile way. They're this tiny,
Yeah.
like not they're like this tiny. Um, and like just holding them, changing them, washing them, you gotta be really careful. So it's just like you have no idea. So you kind of put all your faith into the book they give you. It's like this is the first 6 years of your baby's life. At the age of three, they should say the months 3 months they should be doing this, and 6 months they should be doing that, and doctors, and obviously the people around you. So that's who you're kind of just trusting and kind of just
Hmm.
going through it, and you're kind of winging it. The whole, I guess, the first baby, you're pretty much winging everything that comes your way. Um,
Like you can plan as much as you want, but you're still weighing it.
Pretty much, yeah. You're pretty much, yeah. Like you can, like there were times, like I mean, I'm going off a like small off topic, but there was a time when I was like before the baby came, and we were like, oh, when the baby comes, when the baby naps, I'll go to the gym, I'll do this, we'll cook, we'll do this, we'll go for movie nights, and literally everything, like just doesn't happen. But the yeah. So what happened was like at 6 months, they should be kind of a little bit responding to hearing what you're saying, and kind of like at least responding to their names, clapping, start doing certain things. And around 9 months or 12 months, they should be kind of like pointing at least, stuff like that. Like some gestures should be there. Clapping is a big one. Walking, you know, making sounds. So we realized that like he was not responding to his name all the time. It was like maybe 3 out of 10 times we'd be sitting there, we'd be screaming his name, like Adam, like come here, look, Adam, like come crawl over here. And we noticed this because a lot of we have a niece who's the similar age, and she was right away, boom, turn around, walk, crawls over, that kind of stuff. We're like, what's wrong? And at the 6 month point, we went to the doctors, and the doctor's like, look, you're worrying too much. You have a baby, enjoy the baby. Parents tend to read things on Google, WebMD, and all this stuff, and start thinking the worst. Just
Yeah.
enjoy it. It's fine. It's fine. I think around the 1 year mark, um, we went back to the doctor. We're like, look, there's something. We feel something's concerning because he's getting sick a lot. He's always getting sick every month. Um, he's just not responding to his name. He doesn't do things, like he's not pointing for things, he's not asking for things, and he just whinges, or like we have to kind of guess, like, do you want this, or pushes it away, like, do you want that? So the doctor did some, like, I think did like two tests. It was like she called his name like 3 times in a row. She's like, Adam, Adam, Adam. It was not good. It was like Adam, 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 and then nothing. Starts writing down. Then she asked me to blow some bubbles and put the bubble thing down. He was super excited looking at them. And then he, instead of asking me for help, he just climbed on the stool at this clinic, pulled the sheet down, and the bubbles fell on the ground. He got off, picked up the bubbles, like, hey, I got the bubbles. Um, and the doctor was like writing things down. I'm like, what the heck? Why are you writing stuff down? And she's like, oh, he should have asked you for help. Like he shouldn't have done things that by himself. He should have pointed. He should have been like, daddy or baba, whatever he wants to say, like that. Um, and then she's like, look, I'm gonna be honest with you. From this, what I see right now, and what you're telling me, he's may have some developmental delays and some issues. So just kind of, and it's just printing out a whole bunch of pamphlets, for ADHD, for ADD, for kids with like on the spectrum, for Down syndrome, for this and that. And she's like, look, these are the things that that we're seeing all this stuff. You might need this help. You might need this professional help. You might need this therapy and that therapy. And we're like, oh, like, wait, we just came here to ask you if you can check his ears and see if there's anything wrong. Like, why can't he hear? And she's like, oh, no, his ears seem fine. This is obviously on a different level now. This is a more developmental thing.
Yeah.
And right there, I remember this day. It was like 2019. No, not 2019. 2021 December, and we were like shocked. Like our whole world just like came crashing down because we were like, developmental issues, and she's giving all these pamphlets. Like our hearts were like palpitating and like palpitating. Like it was like beating really fast, and we're like
Yeah.
thinking and like what's the next step, what's happening? And she's like, listen, guys, stick together, be there for your child. Your child needs you more than ever. And we're just like listening, and everything's just like, it was like those scenes in a movie where like you just find out you have terminal cancer, and everything just becomes a blur, and all you hear is an echo sound. Like that's how I felt, at least.
Mm.
And we're just driving. That drive back home was just like, what do we do next? Like, and we kept looking back at my son and we're like, Adam, and he just like sitting there playing with his own hands and stuff like that. And he's not responding. We're like, geez, like, and he's not deaf because we also got his ears checked and he was able to hear the different pinging sounds and stuff like that. We're like, okay, well, and like we came home, we broke down. We're like, okay, well, like it could be any of these things. Like there's like we could be having a whole bunch of different. And we started YouTubing and all this stuff, and all these things start popping up, like
Mm-hmm.
and it's leading towards one definite answer. And we're just like, no, we're not going to believe this. There's no way. There's no way. We went to the clinic, our local walk-in clinic, and we started talking to them. And he's just like looking at him. He's like, well, I don't 100% see it, but like I don't see any developmental that much delays. He's growing on path. His head circumference, his height, everything seems fine. But we can run some tests and all this stuff. And we're just like, well, what happens if you run the tests? Well, like if you run these tests, then he's definitely like it might come in positive, and then you're on this path of like disabilities, like developmental disabilities. It's like almost like then it's hard to get out of it. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And that's the case. What happened was that like everybody at that clinic, regardless of what doctor we went to, they were just saying like, look, your son has developmental, because it became like these notes that he just kept revising.
Yeah, and so no matter like the next doctor that you would see would look back at the first doctor's notes and see exactly
Exactly.
what they wrote down and
Yeah.
would associate, okay, these notes mean this sort of
Yeah.
outcome almost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's like there was this one time that my son had a fungus on his tongue and he was just complaining about burning sensation. He was sticking his tongue out, and we took him to the doctors, and the doctor was like, I'm like, he's not eating and he's refusing food. And they're like, oh, is this a common thing? Because it happens with a lot of kids who display developmental disabilities. And we're just like, are you serious? Like, as if no other kid has ever denied food for no specific reason.
Yeah.
And I'm like, can you look at his tongue though? Because his tongue seems to be the issue. He looks at it, he's like, oh yeah, he has a fungus thrush. Here's some drops. I'm like, so everything you just said is just bullshit. Because
Yeah.
you literally were like, if I didn't question you to check his tongue, you would have been like, oh yeah, do it because your son has developmental disability. I mean, it was just like it was a very huge kind of struggle to kind of, we changed clinics. And then what we started doing, we started reaching out to, we had some friends that were doctors, and then we went to a different clinic, and they said that check other things, check his ears, check his tongue, if there's anything wrong with that.
Mm-hmm.
So we went to he's a doctor. He checked his tongue, and he's like, your son has a tongue tie. And we're like, what? He's a tongue tie? He's like, yeah. Usually the nurses and the midwife, when they're born, they kind of do a little a finger swoop under the tongue, and they're like, they can tell right there, and they snip it, and it's fine. And
so
we're like, well,
your son's tongue was basically like the skin underneath like went further up his tongue, so his tongue was
back,
basically stuck
so he
down.
could never stick it out.
Yeah.
He could never stick it down, and that's one of the reasons why he couldn't swallow food properly, because when you're swallowing food, you need your tongue to push it back and all this stuff. Even speaking some certain words, you need like the L's and all this stuff. So we're like, he's like, you have a tongue tie, and he's already a year and a half old. So he's a year and a half living with a tongue tie. He can't keep food down. Every time he gags on food, whatever, he just can't. He just vomits it out because he can't use his tongue. His gag reflex is horrible. So when we went to the ENT, and then they're like, "Yep, he has a huge tongue tie." My wife did some research. She fought our GP pretty much to get him a referral to go to the ENT and get it done. And the ENT is like, "Why didn't you come sooner? Why wasn't this caught sooner by a whole bunch of people?" Because this could have been resolved like a year and a half ago when he was a baby still.
Yeah.
And we got the tongue tie done in 2022 in January. So that was done. Then he was still getting sick every month. Then the same doctor that we went to, like our family friend, he was like, did you check his ears? Maybe he needs grommets in. Because with grommets, what happens is it's like you get ear infections. That's what he was having. And he can't release the inflammation in his ear.
Yeah,
so
like the pressure. Up. Yeah.
So it just builds up. So he either just like it comes down his nose, and he can't release that infection. So he's like, so we went to the ENT again. We had to fight for it. The doctor, the GP was like, look, he needs 10 to 12 ear infections in 1 year to be referred to an ENT. My son was at 9, and he wouldn't refer him.
Oh my!
He was like, no, he's not there yet. So we went to a different doctor, and the doctor was able to get it for him. And we went to the ENT, and he's like, that's ridiculous. I would have done a 7 or 6, so like if he kept getting done. And he got it done. And he's like, watch, in a month's time, he's going to be starting hearing things. He's going to start like speaking 100%. We're like, okay, well, I mean, we're at this point, we're just like, let's
Skeptical.
solve all these two issues. Because
Yeah.
now we've been told that he has developmental delays, he has a tongue tie, he has this. Let's just see, take it by ear. We're not being hopeful. And then like I remember being in the car and I'm like, Adam, and he like looked up. It's just like, wait, what? And he goes home and we start talking and he's just like, every time I called his name, he like looked up. I'm like, Adam. He's like, yep. Like he didn't say yep, but he's like, you know, by his ears, you could tell he was like heightened
Yeah.
hearing. And the thing what the doctor was saying was that like the ENT said like now he can at least differentiate words. We were confusing him because there was so much infection being built up. It's like putting cotton cloth inside your ear, and I'm talking to you and I'm saying, hey, I'm saying bat, but you could be hearing act or cat or sat or whatever because all you
Yeah.
hear is a muffled.
Mm-hmm.
So he was just like, so as soon as they cleared it out, he was hearing things a lot more cleaner. He was able to hear more evenly, and right away like started picking up words, started saying words, started understanding things, nodding his head, engaging. And within I think a 3 or 4 month time period, I think since he got it done in July, since then it's March now, he's over 300 words now speaking. He's like communicating, he's telling us what's wrong. He comes to me, he's like, I might hurt my nose, this thing hurt my nose, I want this, I want that. And it's just like, okay, well, you're communicating now. He's following because we went to speech therapy as well. We did the whole bunch of therapies, and the speech therapist was like, he needs to communicate this many words by this much by this time, and he surpassed it in like 3 months because he finally could hear better.
Yeah. Imagine that.
And I'm like, yeah, I mean, like, you know, honestly, like, I want to go back to that doctor and be like, hey, Adam, go talk to her for a second. But like, it just became this kind of, it was a huge, like, we were just like, okay, well, he's saying this now. And now it's to the point where, like, yesterday, he just tells me, like, he goes and tells my wife everything that I do to him. If I yell at him, for example, if I'm like, hey, don't be that, you're doing naughty, he'll go. He's like, oh, daddy did this. Daddy's naughty because he's telling me. You know, it's like 2 3 words, but he's linking them, trying to link them, and telling a story, and he can communicate that
That's
as
great.
opposed to him just sitting there crying, and we're trying
Yeah.
to figure out why he's crying.
Wow. Yeah, that's a really like interesting and fascinating and sad story like all together. There's so many emotions that
Yeah,
I feel
yeah.
when you tell me that story. And I want to understand like how did you and your wife like kind of work together as a team, and were there any sort of like disagreements that you had in terms of like when all this stuff was happening, and how did you move forward together, because obviously you guys have to
Mm.
make decisions together, so like how did you go about doing that?
Look, there's always going to be two schools of thought or more with when you're parenting together, and that was the same case, and that's going to be in every household. Like I might want to do something this way, and
Mm,
then my wife might want to do something this way. So there were times where like you just have to kind of like let one person take the lead if there's something happening, and not try to confuse a child because that's the end thing that you don't want to confuse the child by you saying do this and then that parent saying do this. So and this is like, okay, well, if you're teaching them this way, then find out what does follow along. So there was a lot of communication that we kind of had to like strengthen up on our ends. Um, and that was really key. And it was just being supportive for each other, like being there. So what we did was, it was luckily we were both working from home.
mm-hmm.
We were able to give our son that attention, but coming together and spending time as not just, oh, when I get a chance, I'll spend time and then I'll go away and then do my thing and then you come and like, that's not going to help my like a child, any child. And so it was communication. Like we had to kind of agree on like, this is how we're going to do this. Fine, no TV, no screen time. Let's focus it down to this much. Let's not give lollipops or this, not even though that's not irrelevant to that, but like this, the screen time was a big one.
Yeah.
Taking him out a lot, putting him in front of people. The thing is, like, you gotta also understand that he was born into COVID, so he
Mm-hmm.
had no understanding of people. He had no understanding. He knew just us, the people living in the house, and just his cousin that we were allowed, the 5 people. So going to parks, he had no idea how a park functioned. Whereas my niece, who's 8, it was like, oh, it's a park again. Like, I know how a park works.
Yeah.
He had no idea how a park works. Like, he has no idea how to climb up, come down the slide. If is this fun? Is this considered fun? Is this considered a task? Like, you know what I mean? Like a child doesn't know. He hasn't grown into it. Um, so it was like doing these activities, doing a lot of, and because he had the developmental delays, which ended up being the end kind of kind of a theory behind why my son wasn't speaking and stuff. It was just like the speech delays and all that. We had to kind of work extra and show him flashcards and work with him activities, get him picture books, show him,
Mm-hmm.
sit with him, work extra hard compared to other parents who might just like, here's a book. If they're putting 1 hour, I'm not saying like, they may not spend time, but if they're putting 1 hour, we had to put 3 to 5 hours
Yeah.
and constantly be switched on. I had to constantly be this persona of just like this kind of like this Blue's Clues type of Dora the Explorer a character for my son, and
Yeah.
be like, this is an orange, the orange is color
Yeah.
orange, you know what I mean? And it's like, so that way he gets excited. It's like, the orange, okay. I can't be like, this is an orange, this is a ball. It was bringing this out, this much energy, and it was,
Yeah.
that's how we had to kind of do it.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot. But I mean, like it's a great sort of ending to the story. Well, not ending, but like it's a great conclusion to what was happening, because I mean,
Yeah.
you have all of these, all of a sudden, like you go for a routine ear checkup and it goes from 0 to 100. Like your son has all of these developmental delays. Here's like 6 pamphlets. All right, have fun, figure it out. To eventually, thankfully, identifying like 2 of the real problems. And it was a year and a half into his life, unfortunately, but the problems were identified, and you're putting in all of this extra work to kind of help him catch up. But he's behind, not because of developmental delays, but because of 2 physical things that were actually happening that could have been solved a lot earlier. So it's an interesting, really interesting story. Before I ask you the next question, we have like 3 minutes left.
Sure.
Is there is there any way you could give me like 10 more minutes?
I can give you another 15, 20 minutes. No, all good.
Oh, all right. Sounds good.
Sorry, all good.
About the power outage and everything.
Sorry, okay. Yeah, all good. Go ahead.
All good. Awesome. So when it comes to this experience that you had with your son and your wife, like what are some of your like major takeaways from this like sort of entire experience?
100%. It was trust whoever's instinct it is, whether it's the father's gut instinct or if it's the mother's gut instinct. In this case, it was my wife. She had this gut instinct, like gut feeling that there's something wrong, he's not listening. And she pursued it, even though I was the one was like, look, I'm sure he's fine. Give it another month or 2, give it another 3 months. We'll see. He's still 6 months, because the thing is like that child could grow in 12 months and they could pick up in the last 11 months. But it was her gut instinct that was like, no, I want to chase this. Something's wrong. And that's why in the first 6 months she went, and the doctor was like, no, you're fine. Just enjoy your baby. You're worrying too much. And then she went back after 6 months again. She's like, no, something's wrong. And all of a sudden, boom, drops a bomb on us. So I would say 100% like, trust the gut instinct, whatever you're feeling, whether, like I said, the father could have it, the mother, in this case, my wife. And I would 100% say that if you feel there's anything wrong, if you feel that something's not going normal, if you don't see like this can't be right, just don't listen to the first person you go to. Don't put all your faith into the first person you go to. Do your research, go to multiple people, talk to your friends, talk to different specialists and in the industry who can kind of guide you to go to to make a well kind of informed kind of decision. And that's the same thing. Like I feel like I was more so I took a back foot on this because it was more so like I kind of was like, okay, I'm sure it's fine. What can I do to kind of now sort this out? Whereas my wife was like, she was taking action. She was like, okay, his tongue was off. I gotta go to the GP, get a referral, take him to the ENT, fight for it, because he was like, no, he needs 10 to be there, even though he was at 9. So like, I would like, 100%, like, do your full research. At the same time, what's on the web, take that with a grain of salt. Because even now there are things that I'll give you a perfect example. If I look up signs of autism, for example, and I look it up, there are things that pop up that even me and you will have and will be on the spectrum. There are things like, stimming. Like if I'm sitting there nervous and I'm spinning the finger, or I'm like, tapping my foot, that's a sign of autism. You know what I mean? So like if I just looked at my son and he's like tapping his foot, I'd be like, oh, okay, well, that's sign number one.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Right away. So,
Yeah.
but you can't look at that. It's like everything included and plus some more.
Yeah.
So that's the thing is like trust your gut instinct, do your research, talk to more than one kind of opinions, not
Mm.
believe everything on the web, but kind of be well informed about the entire topic,
Yeah.
and just kind of do your own due diligence is what I
Yeah.
would say take away from it.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great advice. And from my own personal experience and just from talking with a couple people, some in the medical field and some not, same type of thing. Like it's okay to get a second opinion. Like that's
Yeah,
something that I was never really taught. And it was something that I never even considered until a situation kind of like that happened where a doctor walked in. I had an issue and a doctor walked in. Literally, I'm not kidding, 30 seconds. Oh, yep, this is what it is, and walked out of the room. And I'm like,
yeah,
I have so many questions. Like, what just
yeah,
happened? And
yeah.
that's the experience that I had where I was like, okay, I don't feel right about this. My gut, like you're
Mhm.
saying, my gut is telling me to search for more information that this doesn't feel right. So go
Yeah.
see somebody else. Even if that second person says that, oh, nope, doctor number one was right, then it's like, okay, at least somebody else has like,
Mm.
who I've never seen before has taken a
Yeah,
look at me without seeing their notes and can
yeah,
make the same conclusion. Okay, then
yeah,
maybe this is what it actually is.
yeah.
And the other
And
thing is, oh,
no,
go ahead. Sorry.
oh, I said no offense to doctors. Like I know
Yeah.
there's a lot of doctors out here, but like I feel like a lot of doctors won't counter or challenge the initial doctor's diagnosis.
Mm,
And that's one thing we had to deal with. Is like if I came to another doctor and I told them the entire story that, hey, I saw doctor number one, they'd be
yeah.
like, oh, well, if doctor number one said it, then they must be right. They won't bother doing more research because they're like, oh, doctor number one must be right because he's also a doctor. I'm not challenging a doctor. It's
Yeah.
almost like so we had to go and go be like, oh yeah, we're seeing you for the first time about this. What are your thoughts?
Yeah.
And they'd be like, oh yeah, it's so. And then we tested it, and the doctor was like, oh yeah, the notes, oh yeah, developmental. And it's just like, no, like no, so we had to change doctors. So you got kind of have to kind of play that, be sly and be kind of about it because these doctors sometimes they won't challenge another doctor's opinion, and
Mm,
it's almost like looked down upon if you do because like why are you challenging a medical professional's opinion
yeah.
if they've already given it their expertise on it.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point. And the other thing that I was going to bring up was like being an advocate for yourself, like in the doctor's office and outside of it, because
Yeah.
I've had multiple friends where same sort of thing, where they've had some sort of diagnosis and and it's not until they like put their foot down, like literally in front of a
Yeah.
doctor, seeing a doctor for the second, third, fourth time and putting their foot down and saying, no, like this, I'm requesting this because
Mm.
I don't feel like this is the answer. I've tried everything that you've given me and this is not the answer. So I
Yeah.
need to go see, somebody else or be
Yeah.
referred to another person.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, definitely some pretty big lessons. And then what did you learn from like how you and your wife sort of handled adversity? Were there any like major takeaways about your communication or the style that you guys like to, I guess, approach things with, other than like the go with the gut instinct? Was there anything else that really came from it?
Is this in general or is this towards more towards what we went through?
In terms of like what you went through.
um it was mostly just like how we can kind of be on the same page.
Mm,
It was being the united front. That was a big thing. We couldn't kind of let my son see that we were distraught by it, that we were kind of upset, or we were, whatever. We had to kind of just go ahead as normal because things were normal. We just didn't like it was just because some doctors said gave us a million pamphlets. We knew what we actions we had to take, and
yeah.
we took those actions. We provided him all the resources to kind of get through it. And the thing is, it was just a matter of like he's just like 6 to 8 months behind because of all those issues. Had they been taken care of and doctors listened to us 6 months, 8 months earlier,
Yeah.
this none of it would have happened. He would have grown and hearing everything normal from the beginning. But like it's it's just becoming a united front and being communicating with each other. There were times when like obviously it takes a toll. Emotionally some days you just wake up and you just think about everything that you went through and you're like you want to cry, you want to fight, you're in a bad mood, whatever. But it's just more so understanding where that emotion is coming from. And it's nothing to do with you. It's nothing to do with what's happening. It's just that that person it's something clicked, something got triggered, and they need to just let that emotion be expressed fully.
Yeah, no, that's a great way to describe it. It's not always I'm mad because of my wife doing something. It's something else that triggered me, or she's upset about something, and it's recognizing that the emotion is coming up, and not
Yeah.
suppressing it or pushing it to the side, just letting her let it out, or her letting me
Yeah.
absolutely let it out. So that makes total
Yeah.
sense.
And like one big thing that we do is just that at the end of the night is like, regardless if we're angry or not, is like, come to bed. You have to come
Yeah.
to bed, put it to bed, and that's it. Because you taking that anger out and then going to a different room to go to sleep, or sleeping on the couch, you're just not tackling that problem. You got to really remind yourself that you're in this in the long run. I mean,
Mhm.
you'd hope so, but like you're in this in the long run. You're going to raise a child together, and you're going to do it together.
Yeah, 100%. My wife and I do the exact same thing. We're like, it doesn't matter if we were on the same page or not. If we, had some disagreements or arguments throughout the day, it's always lay in bed, kiss each other, say I love you, and good night, and then sleep together in that same bed. Because
Yeah.
again, both and different things work for different couples. But for us, that's what works. For you guys, that's what
Hmm.
works. Because and most of the time for us, it's like, we like to talk about the issue before going to bed. Sometimes it's really difficult for me to be like, okay, we'll address this in the morning. Good night. I love you. Like, that's really difficult for me to do,
Yeah.
but everybody kind of finds what works for them.
Yeah.
So I'm thrilled that you two were able to work together, stay, united in your front, and to figure out like the real kind of issues that your son was experiencing, and to get those taken care of, and to sort of, just navigate that unknown or the uncertainty together, because that's got to be
Yeah.
really challenging, especially as a new parent. One thing that I want to ask you about now is like, like I said at the beginning of this episode, I've always seen you as, a person that embraces discomfort, kind of leans into it, and really goes after the different things that you want in life. And I'm interested in like how you're going to, or how you are sort of teaching your son to kind of adopt those same sort of values or characteristics, and to potentially be okay with failing, for example.
Mm. Um, that's a good question, but just it's the thing is, this is all new to me, right? It's still
Yeah.
like, even though I've had my son for 2.5 years, and we're looking to hopefully have more in the future, but like it's all a new it's all new waters, and it's always going to be new at every phase.
Yeah.
And right now, the issues that he's going through are mostly not being able to share his toys, for example. Challenging that and making him to work in a play in a more collaborative space is going to be a small problem. Maybe in the future he might just deal with, I can't focus at school, or then I can't find a girlfriend, whatever it is. Like, you're going to have to deal with all these challenges as you go. But like, it's all new to us, so it's we like I said, we're winging it. Every single time we're winging it. But it's just, our goal is to just make him confident in who he is. Like, that's the
Mm,
main thing. And it's like, and that's very important for me, because I want him to be himself in all phases of his life.
yeah.
And like, not just in wait till university for him to be like, okay, no, it gets better when you're 18, because you'll meet all these different people and different like-minded people. I don't want him to wait till that long,
Yeah.
to find his ground and try to find his footing and find his personality and all this stuff. And I don't want him to also be the kid who A, is popular, or B, who is not popular. I just want him to be who he is himself.
Yeah.
And the friends he finds, the people he finds, his support team, whatever it is, I want them to be, I want them to be the ones that are there when he is who he is for
Yeah.
himself, not when he's putting on a facade for the cool people, when he's putting on a facade for his actual friends, or whatever it is. That's the main thing. Is what we're trying to do is just, our focus is just be yourself. If he, and sometimes I'll pick out his clothes, but sometimes I'll let him pick out his own clothes.
Yeah.
I'll open this thing. I'm like, what do you want to wear? And then sometimes it's just slippers and like shorts and a hoodie. That's what you want to wear. That's what you want to wear. You know what I mean? Like, it's obviously like, I'll kind of control it. Like, look, we're going to a wedding. Maybe you shouldn't wear this, but like, that's where it starts. Like, because I want him to express himself in whatever way he wants to express himself. It's kind of like that movie, Big Daddy, when like it's like, oh, he wants to be Frankenstein and he swears the, you know what I mean? Oh no, not Frankenstein. Is it Frankenstein? Or I forget what it was, but like it's like he's like, and he puts on the glasses and he goes to school like I can't see everybody because he's invisible. So that's the same kind of mentality that I'm kind of go with. The other thing is that I don't want to kind of ever tell him no to things, or like not no, sorry, things that like you can't do this because you're too small. You can't do this because you're still a child. If he wants to do it, and if he thinks he can do it, and if I think that he can do it, then I'll let him do it, kind of thing. So, for example, if he's at a park right now, those kind of ladders that are kind of like the chains, they're a bit hard because they wobble a bit, and for a 2.5-year-old, it's a bit challenging because it's not a firm footing to grab on. So he climbs it. He was climbing, and I'm like, okay. So I stood next to him. I had my hands just around him, kind of, but not really there, just in case he doesn't feel like threatened or whatever. But I was like, look, do it. If you think you can do it, go. You got this. He took one step. I'm like, okay, now Adam, another step. He took another step, climbed it. His cousin, who's the same age, and the other kids, they looked at it. No, that's too scary. They ran off. He just kept going, and he got to the end. He's like, I did it, yes, and he gave me a high five and everything. And I was like, see, I don't. If I had told him that, hey man, don't do this. You're too small for it, or this, you're gonna get hurt. I would have destroyed his confidence right there. He will always live in his mindset because I told him that, you couldn't do this. So that's another thing, is like, I want him to feel that, like, tomorrow if he comes like, hey, I want to, be an NRL player, or I want to join the cricket team, you can do it. Go ahead. Whether you fail or you don't fail, you fail with, pride. You come back, at least I did it. I tried, I failed, didn't work out, next thing.
Yeah. So no, you're talking about developing his confidence, and basically not, you don't want to tell him like, oh, you can't do this, you're too small. Oh, you can't do this because you're still a child. And like the jungle gym or playing on the playground is like a perfect example of just like, let him explore what he wants to explore. And of course, be there if there's, some legitimate, safety concern, but really let him explore. And the reason why I ask you about this topic, and I want to ask you even deeper, like, how do you help him develop his confidence? As like, I'm so interested in this topic of, I mean, like, you're literally responsible for raising another human, and eventually I will be a dad as well. And so I have ideas of how to, develop a little kiddo's confidence, but I'm interested in what's worked for you and what hasn't worked so far.
What hasn't worked for me, I'll start from there. It has been kind of always telling him no in things. That hasn't worked. My son, by kind of characteristic and personality, he's a very curious kid. And he likes exploring. He likes kind of doing his own things, understanding how things work, and then doing it himself. He's very independent in that way. So if I try to put my own, I guess, opinion on it, or if I tell him to do it my own way, or do it this way because this is the right way of doing it, he's like, no, I do it this way because this is how I do it. So for him, it's not A plus B equals C. It's how is C minus B equals A. You know what I mean? Get the same answer at the end of the day, but it's like he finds different ways of doing things. And I don't. And the way what I do is, like, what I try not to do is not to challenge that. Unless it's like, unless he's like, oh, BLUE equals red. Like, unless he's saying stuff like that, like, it's like I gotta tell him, no, that's blue. Like, stuff. If he's finding different ways of doing things, why should I kind of, crush his hopes, crush his way of doing things? Because at the end, this is what we need in the future. We need people who think outside the box, who think differently. And that's one thing that I want him to do, is like always be curious, and that's what he does. Like, for example, we got him this drill set, and he saw me fixing an IKEA set with a drill and everything, and it's like, oh, he always comes to me like, Adam's turn. I'm like, yeah, sure. And he holds the drill, he puts it into the hole, and he starts drilling it. And obviously it's heavy, and he puts it down, and he saw me hammering, and they took the hammer, he knew exactly what to do with it. And I'm just like, this is amazing. And then I got him a little set, and right away, like, he took the nail, he put it in the thing. It was a toy set, and he starts drilling it into the hole, building things. I'm like, geez, like, but if I told him, like, hey, let me show you how to do it, I want him to think how he's going to do it. I want you
Yeah.
to try first. And that's my way of, is a lot of things, just let him do his own thing. I don't want to be
Yeah.
that micromanaging dad is like, do it my way, or like, let me show you, or like, or be upset because he's not doing something a certain way because I did it a certain way. I think that's a huge thing that a lot of us kind of, fall. We just kind of like, oh, generationally, my dad did it this way, his dad did it this way, so I gotta do it the same way.
Hmm.
It's kind of taking a step back and just letting your child be that independent person. And like I said, I have my own political views on certain, so I'm not going to dive deeper into that part. But I want him to be comfortable with who he is and be confident with
Yeah.
what he actions he takes, and once he takes them, and take calculated risk, but be there and do it in a controlled environment, because I want him to kind of grow as a person. I don't want him to feel like I'm too scared to do this. I never want to crush any hope, any dream of his, um, because I want to be the advocate for that as well at school. I don't want any teachers telling, hey, you're not smart enough to do this, or you're not smart enough to do that, or
Hmm.
you're not strong enough an athlete to join the team. You know what I mean? Like, that's a big thing that happened to me as well. Like, I wanted to join our sports team. Oh, you're not, they took the popular kids, just, that's just became the thing. Is like, oh, these are the group of cool kids, put them on the team. So I just, it's just letting him be his own person, letting him explore himself, let him find himself, his own strengths, his own weaknesses, and just, letting, like, you are his, you have to be his supporter, his cheerleader, and
Yeah.
kind of just be like, hey man, you got this, you got this. I'm here with you. You got this. Don't be scared, kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's amazing. And I love how you kind of frame that, where you said that when your son Adam is doing something, it's refraining from saying, no, this is the right way to do it. Like, in your brain, yeah, it might be, but he's got to like go through his own process and figure that out. Because if he hears, no, you have to do it this way, like
Mm-hmm.
over and over and over again, eventually he's going to become conditioned to think, okay, well, the way that I'm thinking about it is wrong, so I need to listen to the way that somebody else does it.
Mm-hmm.
And that creativity might not develop like you hope it would. We basically did the same thing with my niece. Like, whenever she was trying to do something, whether it was putting a puzzle together or building something or whatever, we're always like, just let her think it out, let her
Yeah.
mess up whatever way that she's going to mess up, because like every time that she messes up, it's going to help her to understand like what's right or what's wrong, or find a different way to sort of do something. So I love the way that you're really thinking about that. Now, as we move into sort of wrapping up this episode, first of all, thank you for sharing like so much about your story and about how you've developed this mindset, the story of how you met your wife, and the challenges that you've had with your son, even though he's only like 2.5 right now. Um, my last question is always pretty much the same thing, which is, what advice do you have for somebody that wants more out of life, but hasn't taken that first step yet? And I kind of want to reframe it just a little bit, because we've talked so much about your son. I almost want to say, you know, let's fast forward a bit, and let's say that your son is like 15 years old,
Mm-hmm.
and your dad, and he comes to you, and you're like, and he's like, dad, I'm really scared. Like, I kind of want to do this, but like all my friends are thinking of, doing something else. And I'm really scared about, doing this thing that I really want to do. What advice would you have for your son at that moment in time?
I will tell him to like kind of ask him, like, trust his gut, and then lay out all the pros and cons for both decisions. And at the end of the day, do what you feel is right. Do what you think is gonna kind of, as long as you don't put like, your parents to shame, your own dignity, your own integrity to shame, kind of thing. At the end of the day, you don't want to be
Hmm.
caught in the middle of something where like everything that you worked for just went down the drain. You fell into the wrong
Yeah.
crowd because you got peer pressured, and now like, like God forbid, you're sitting in the police station being questioned for something. You know what I mean? You don't want to go down that route. So lay down the cons, lay down the pros. Are these people looking out for my the best interest in me? Are these people, doing the right things? You know, if I do take decision A over B, what is going to be the pros and what is going to be the cons. Like you got to think of, and I want him to be, I'll be there to think with him, through with him, and my wife will be there as well, and he'll have a family as well. But the thing is, it's like you need to at some point make those decisions and then learn how to make those decisions. And the thing is, I want him to learn from those decisions. If he does take a wrong decision,
Mm-hmm.
for example, like let's not hope. I hope if it's a bigger decision, I'll probably have to jump in. But like, let's say it's a course. I don't know if I should take this course at university. I'm really diving towards this one. If he does that, take it and he doesn't like it, he's learned from it. Okay, you know what? Macroeconomics wasn't for
Yeah.
me. I'm going to go into this different course now. So at least he's learned. At least he doesn't feel like, oh, what could have been if I just trusted somebody and went to macroeconomics. I could have became an economist for the Wall Street, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But it's just like, make those decisions, write down your pros and cons. I mean, you don't have to physically do it, but just understand what are the consequences of what actions you're going to take. And every action has, a consequence to it.
Yeah. Yeah. No kidding. And that's something that my wife and I talk about so much is trying to help our kids to be able to make good decisions, right? And to understand very early, like, okay, here, you choose option one, these are the consequences. You choose option two, these are the consequences.
Yeah.
Like, and whatever option they choose, like following through with that, because it's all about, teaching them, how to make decisions for themselves. And the other point that you made there was essentially kind of saying that like nothing is permanent, right? Like you make one decision and you explore it and you find out that something's not working or it's not what you thought it was. It's okay. You can pivot and you can move to something else because there's time. There's, you have time, you have energy, you can kind of shift and move your focus. So you don't have to like choose one and it's and this is the road that you stay on. You can kind of move around and go from place to place. And I think all of us have really done that.
Yeah. But it's also being the parent that has open communication with your child. You don't want your child to feel, if I did take this decision, what are my parents going to think? They invested so and so much money into my, swimming classes because they wanted me to become this athlete. Because I told them I want to be a swimming athlete, and now I don't like it. But now I'm too afraid to tell my parents because I don't want to make them feel like, we wasted our money. I want him to be open with me and be like, look, I don't, swimming's not for me anymore. I want to go into, I want to learn how to play piano now. Great, cool. Let's do that then. Whatever makes you happy. But as long as you're not always constantly be like, okay, now I don't want to do this anymore. I want to do that. I don't want to do this anymore. I want to do that. It's like make a decision. Be confident in a decision and follow through with it. Because at the end of the day, you don't want someone who just keeps hopping around. That's not a good trait to have. You have your opportunities. I'm not saying that there's a cap at how many mistakes you can make or how many trials you can take. But at the same time, you have to kind of make definitive decisions and have that security in yourself and confidence that, you know what, this is the way for me. Like, I'm going to take this way. And like I said, like, it's just, you kind of have to, and as a parent, even if they do take 100 different decisions, you're going to have to be there supporting them. But at the end of the day, you got to tell them, like, this is the 101st time, which activity you want to do.
Yeah, no kidding. There's a balance between like being intentional about it and knowing that it's something that you don't want versus like just quitting because you want to move on to something else. So
and like you gotta teach your kids to value things, value time, value your parents' time, value your own time, value money, value things, value family, friends, all this stuff. So these are all things that you gotta think about. I mean, it's 2.5 is really young at the moment, but these are things I know at 10, at 15, at 18, when he wants his first car, I gotta tell him, like, look, I bought my car with my own money. Don't expect me to give handouts. Kind of, you know what I mean? Like, these are the things you gotta think about.
Yeah, no, absolutely. One of the many challenges of parenting and raising another human, right? Awesome. Aariz, well, again, thank you so much for sharing like your entire story. It's been so much fun. I've definitely learned new things about you, and I can see how much you care about like what you do and about your family, and it's really, I really admire it. I really do just admire how much you really care about your family and how much time and effort and everything that you're putting into that. So thank you so much for sharing your story. It's been a pleasure. And I look forward to following more online.
And thank you for having me. And I love what you do and keep going.
I ain't stopping, brother. I ain't stopping.
Thank you.